Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Precautions tonight as a local oil refinery shuts down a pipeline near Amen Park.
CHS Refinery tells Q2 its workers are investigating a sheen on a nearby drainage ditch along King Avenue East.
The Laurel Oil Refinery operates a pipeline in the area, but company spokeswoman Rebecca Lentz tells Q2 initial tests did not detect any leaks in the CHS line.
Now, workers were spotted tonight laying multiple tarps across the length of the ditch, about 50 yards apart, behind the U.S. Bureau of Land Management office building. Now, Lentz says the city of Billings notified CHS on Monday afternoon about the sheen. She says CHS will continue to investigate, and out of an abundance of caution, the line has been shut down.
Lentz says there are a number of potential sources operated by many companies in that area, but again, no cause has been identified. Q2 has reached out to the Billings Public Works Department and Yellowstone County Department of Emergency Management, but we have not heard back yet.
Well, two separate grizzly bear attacks leave 3 Montana hunters injured and shaken, but alive.
And tonight, wildlife experts trying to determine if one bear is responsible for both attacks in the Gravelly Mountains south of Ennis yesterday. MTN's Cody Boyer has the details.
2 separate grizzly bear attacks in almost exactly the same location, hours apart. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks say it all happened up there in the Gravelly Mountains near Cottonwood Creek. According to them, if those hunters hadn't been exactly prepared the way they were, this could have been an entirely different story.
While the bear was in the process of attacking one guy, the other guy sprayed him and sent him on his way.
It's a situation that bears a warning. Some of what you see might be considered graphic. It's also a situation that those living near the Gravelly Range, like Terry James, say is terrifying to imagine.
It was a little of a shocker. They were still in shock as well.
Terry speaks from experience, having met 2 of the hunters involved in yesterday's attacks. While the hunters couldn't speak with us, they did tell us we could use their photos, including this one taken immediately after it happened.
They were dressed in hospital clothing, which was a little odd to start with. He had a pretty big gash in the back of his head that you couldn't see that was bandaged, and the other guy had injuries around his groin area. But they were in good spirits.
Both men had received medical attention and were just looking for some clothes. But in just a few hours, this would happen again.
Later that day, around 6:30 p.m. in the same general area, 2 other hunters were heading north toward Cottonwood Creek and also encountered a bear.
Only one hunter was hurt in that attack. Morgan Jacobson with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks says the area has been locked down to be investigated.
It's unclear whether this was the same bear in both incidents or 2 different bears. That's another part of the puzzle that we're looking into.
Both Shedhorn owner Rob Galentine and the FWP agree. Both of the hunters that stopped into Ennis, bruised and bandaged, were prepared. It may have saved their life.
Things have changed so much in the past 10 years, 20 years. You know, where you just wouldn't want to hike the Madisons or the Gravellys or any of the mountains without bear spray.
Looking back at yesterday, it's safe to say having bear spray can make all of the difference, as well as having a buddy. But you also need to know where your bear spray is. You can't be rummaging for it at the last second. You should be able to pull it out, break the lock on it so you take it off the safety, and then make sure you aim low so when you do hit the bear, you hit it where it counts.
While the 2 from Monday morning want to spread the word, so does Terry. Mother Nature is powerful, but this was an example of how to survive the worst.
We need to tread lightly on their ground and respect these animals.
In Ennis, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Thanks, Cody. Now, until wildlife officials determine if it's the same grizzly in both attacks, that area is closed.
All right, let's turn to the weather now. We went from a bit of a dry spell there to making it up pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. You know, and the grass is turning green all over the country. It's just a wonderful thing. But let me show you how much rain we wound up in the Billings area today. We got quite a bit. 19/100 of an inch is what we wound up with. Takes us to 128 for the month. And obviously, we're ahead of normal there for the year. We're at 1520 already. And the average year-to-date total is 10.75 inches. So, yeah, we've had a pretty good dose of rain again today. Now, watch what happens. The showers continue to move away from the Billings area tonight, and then it looks like throughout most of tomorrow, we're looking at generally dry conditions all the way through Wednesday. But then on Thursday, here comes your next batch of moisture moving in. Look for some more scattered rain showers moving in late in the night on Thursday night and on into Friday. We'll have more about that coming up in a few more minutes. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, earlier this month, MTN reporter Mike Dennison examined the lack of access to high-speed internet service in many parts of rural Montana and what it might take to expand that access. Well, tonight he takes a closer look at another player in this market.
As we reported earlier, the big boys of high-speed internet service, CenturyLink or the cable company's Spectrum, pretty much don't offer broadband once you get several miles outside of Montana's urban centers. That's where smaller wireless internet companies, known by their acronym WISP, have sometimes been stepping in.
We focus on building our facilities out past the 10-mile ring because that's where people are starving for internet. And that's been our mission ever since we started in 2003 doing high-speed broadband, is to get folks the high speed that they need to do business and for kids to do their schoolwork.
That's right. Weber's Montana Sky Networks has been around for more than 15 years, installing fiber optic cable and wireless towers that can beam internet to rural homes in Flathead Lake and Lincoln counties. Robert Bialecki started KDS Networks in Great Falls 12 years ago, after he moved to an area outside the city that didn't have high-speed internet.
So we just figured out how to make it happen. Well, if we can do the same thing from my neighborhood, I can do that for anybody.
KDS has about 1,500 customers, primarily in suburban and rural areas of Cascade County. About a dozen WISPs exist in Montana, in cities big and small. Rather than always running high-speed fiber directly to the home or business, these companies have towers that can shoot a signal to provide that final high-speed link to the internet.
And everybody is talking about fiber because they think, that's the best way. Wireless, on the other side, is that it's a way more efficient way and much more cost-effective way to deliver almost the same thing. If we would have access to public funding, we would accelerate this deployment much faster.
Until last year, wireless providers haven't had access to federal subsidies to expand service to rural areas because they're not a telephone company. One of them, however, has applied for an $11 million low-interest loan from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, proposing to build a fiber and wireless network from Helena to Townsend and Three Forks.
There's almost 40,000 people that you're running into along that way that just would like to have great service. They'd like to have internet that actually works.
Ham says big companies just aren't interested in serving these areas. So why shouldn't the smaller ones do the job? He also says the feds should be identifying the areas that most need service and subsidies, rather than relying on providers to make proposals.
It should be turned around with, hey, we've got $600 million to invest. Where are areas that haven't been touched? Where are areas that people live now where we just know that there's no internet?
Actually, the Federal Communications Commission is preparing to do just that with universal service money and distribute the money through an auction to providers with the best plan to serve these unserved areas. But that process won't be up and running for at least a couple of years. So for now, these small providers are pretty much on their own, filling the gaps in the rural internet landscape. In Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Thanks, Mike. Now, FCC Universal Service funds continue to fund the build-out of high-speed internet networks for rural communities served by telephone co-ops across Montana.
Well, business is booming on Billings West End now with another major retailer about to set up shop. Q2 has learned that outdoor retailer REI is building a new store at the corner of Shiloh and King Avenue. According to permits filed with the city, the company plans to build a 23,000 plus square foot building on the northwest corner of that intersection. REI is one of the country's largest outdoor co-ops with 18 million lifetime members in 155 stores in 35 states. Those include stores already in Bozeman, Missoula, and Kalispell.
Laurel police asking for your help tonight to identify a man who pulled into the Taco Bell drive-thru, pulled out a gun, and demanded money last week. Take a look. The robbery suspect captured in these images ordered a drink from the Laurel restaurant just after 8 o'clock Thursday morning. He then allegedly showed a gun and handed in a note to the employee demanding cash. Now, the man was driving a newer maroon Dodge crew cab pickup truck with a grill guard and running boards. Call Laurel Police if you have information on the suspect or this crime.
In an effort to find schools that don't have a one-size-fits-all approach to learning, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Education's in Montana today. Mick Zase is on an 18-state tour and stopped at elementary schools in Pryor, then here in Billings at Skyview High School. Skyview Principal Deb Black and School District 2 Superintendent Greg Upham led that tour. Zay saw technical classes like family and consumer science, wood shop, and business finance. He also learned about School District 2's new career coaches and their efforts to jumpstart our students' futures.
We know that students vary in their motivation, their talents, their interests, their aspirations, and it makes no sense to put every child in the same classroom, expect them to learn the same material on the same schedule, pretty much in the same way.
Montana, we're not a cookie-cutter approach to education. Every student is unique. Every school experience that that student has is unique, and we need to make sure that that happens in Montana.
Billings Superintendent Greg Upham said the Secretary's visit was a great opportunity to share ideas about education.
Exchanges testy during today's House impeachment inquiry into the president.
Former campaign chairman Corey Lewandowski stuck to the script, refusing to answer Democrats' questions to the point that some demanded he be held in contempt. The White House invoked executive privilege over Lewandowski's conversations with the president, which limited the scope of questioning.
During opening statements, Lewandowski condemned the impeachment inquiry as, quote, unfair.
Secretary Mike Pompeo is heading to Saudi Arabia to meet with the Crown Prince in a diplomatic show of support for the embattled country. A senior U.S. official tells CBS News that Pompeo will get the Saudis' view of what they think ought to be done, as well as other countries there in the Gulf.
And some good news at the gas pump. The Saudi oil minister says the kingdom's oil output is back to pre-attack levels after dipping into its strategic reserve.
Now, exit poll projections from Tuesday's high-stakes Israeli election can be summed up with just a few words: too close to call.
The country's second election in just 5 months could determine whether Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hangs on to power. Final results may take a couple days.
Coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, after fire leveled the historic Sperry Chalet in Glacier Park, its second chance is making history itself. We're going to show you how.
And later in sports tonight, a landmark deal for the PRCA that will bring televised rodeo coverage to a new level.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.